Well, going to the last expert, last but not least expert, which is Vladimir Mitev, a journalist from Bulgaria, from Cross-Border Talks, a dear friend of ours. Please, Vladimir, you have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you to the organizers for this invitation. My speech will deal with some issues which were already touched by others, especially in the first panel, the polarization issue, and as well as the public sphere, European public sphere. In my view, Bulgaria is suffering a strong polarization right now, of course, Bulgarian society has been marked by in-group form of social life. In Western Europe, this type of society usually is called tribal. The issue of tribes is raised. And in the case of the Balkans, usually it's used the word mafia, maybe not obligatory in the criminal way, but in the sense that people somehow live through these in-groups and lose their individuality, etc. However, in these specific conditions of our world, we have a situation in which the American president divides the world into democracies and authoritarian regimes, and we have a situation in which the Russian president attacks Ukraine, and inside the European Union, this contradiction between pro-European Commission and sovereignist forces has been also strong recently. So all this, all that international context certainly strengthens the polarization and the culture of domination, mutual domination, which exists in Bulgarian society. And in my view, it has some challenges, if not even problems, to democracy. First of all, let me start with this, that at the last elections, parliamentary elections, which took place on 2nd April this year, only 40% was the voter turnout. And that means that the government which was eventually formed has the support of maybe 20% of all the voters or even less, because in fact the voters of these two parties or groups of parties supported, originally they voted out of desire to vote against the other partner in the coalition which was formed. So that is maybe one first dimension, that in the conditions of polarization, many people become apathetic and disengage from politics. They leave it to some very engaged and influential propagandists or fighters in social networks. And that is potential danger, because at certain moment, maybe if international conditions change, what the pro-European or pro-democratic option stands for could be attacked from some mobilization out of these disenchanted people. Secondly, we are in a situation in which our region undergoes modernization, and there has been this so-called PNRR in Romanian, a National Plan for Recovery and Resilience, which aims at certain reforms. However, when you have polarized society, any attempt to bring some serious reform, such as green transition, or in the case of Bulgaria, the efforts to move the country closer to the Eurozone, it gets immediately immersed in these polarized contradictions between, let's say, Western Europe or sovereignists, or whatever you call them, pro-European Commission, and national allies or autochthonous allies. So in that situation, the energy for change and the ability of the government to promote change in society is limited, because you don't work with the whole society, and maybe you work with only a part of it. And if too much effort is put into certain reform and resistance is strong, there is a risk of breaking the society. However, for me, the most, maybe it's my specifics, but I am most interested in the third negative aspect of this polarization is related to the media space. In the case of Bulgaria, it's very obvious that our media are unable to form an independent and so-called fourth state form of existence. They're also taken over by this polarization. We have some media who are maybe more professional, but also tend to be funded by foundations such as America for Bulgaria, or some oligarchs who are considered on the good side. And we have some other media who are maybe somehow appealing more to populist tendencies or autochthonous tendency, national capital, etc. And as a result of that, we journalists don't quite have a strong solidarity between one another, and we tend to label one another and to reduce ourselves to either grant holders, which means that people are taking their money or salaries from Western foundations, or so-called rubourgeois, or people who are promoting, let's say, Eastern interests. And I think that is, of course, a negative aspect, as journalism and media are supposed to be an independent space which could be critical of any party. And once again, if we look at the idea of reform and change, there is a need for more media, or more journalists, or more voices to be able to speak to all the parties of societies, and not only to one selected group, which is their echo chamber. In the case of Bulgaria, this is also seen in the case of professional organizations of journalists, with one of them, the Association of European Journalists, being apparently very well linked to Western media organizations, and the other being opened and more appealing to the old generation, more open to countries such as China, Vietnam, and Russia. So I see here some potential for the 3Cs initiative and for regional cooperation initiatives to bring change in such a situation of great polarization. And I believe it could happen through more projects and more support for so-called cross-border media. I was presented as one of the voices and editors of Cross-Border Talks, which is a media published by a Polish foundation called Napshot Foundation, but it is in fact a Polish-Czech, Bulgarian, Romanian cooperation between journalists. And I am also involved with a second media, which is Bulgarian Romanian in its essence. It publishes all its materials in Romanian and Bulgarian in English. It's called The Bridge of Friendship. So in both cases, these media allow me as an author and a journalist to somehow stand a little bit outside of our strong polarization, and to learn and open to the region and learn from it. And I think that could be one way to promote a more democratic, tolerant, and modern way of thinking in our societies, when we are aware of what is going on in our region or in our neighboring countries, when we are able to be a little bit detached, a little bit looking with certain buffer to our national strong passions, maybe we will be able to really grow in peace and become more sophisticated in our thinking, which I think is one of the ideas of what some of other speakers discussed about European citizens and European public sphere. So my entry here is that, or my proposal, if you wish, is that 3Cs initiatives could think not only about innovation funds or investment funds, but maybe it could also discuss internally the idea of some media funds or some possibilities for cooperation between media in the region, which could be, however, it's important that, in my view at least, the principle of support for this media should be not the one that is promoting polarization. So for me, it's very interesting to choose, in a way, not either or, one side or the other, but to choose both any poles in our societies and be able to change them. Thank you.
Thank you everyone. I would love to have more, enough time for interactions, especially in the academic world. We are accustomed with back and forth questions. I would love to speak about Lippmann and John Dewey, about public sphere and many other topics. For sure, we have the chance to do this today during lunch, but also in the future cooperation, because I'm happy you mentioned you have been close to our academic community for already many years, and we are proud and honored to defense, when in fact the society sometimes is not coherent and not necessarily there is a logic behind. Maybe this diplomat, good friend of mine, is right, maybe it's not. And for this reason, we try today to combine different perspectives and to have politicians, to have diplomats, to have academics, researchers, journalists,